This is my third venture. I have set up two ventures in the past in medical diagnostic space and professional writing space. So we will start with speaking about gene-free genetics, followed by detailed insights on how the linkage between gut microbiome and chronic diseases, right? And then a bit about our product, what we are offering, and how we are helping people, improve their health. Gene-free genetics was born out of my own learning transformation journey from a stage of pre-diabetic to becoming a healthy soul, as well as personal suffering my mother faced when she had a cardiac arrest. The current healthcare system as we see it today is best we have when we talk of episodic and infectious diseases. If we have to cure communicable diseases, if we have influenza, if we have viral infections, it's best we have drugs and vaccines that can help cure that. Even if we talk of clinical health conditions like transplant, open heart surgeries, all these we can cure, but obviously these also have collateral damages. But when we talk of chronic diseases, right, these diseases which are suffering every day, these diseases, our system is not designed to cure them. So what best they do is they try to cure symptoms and make us their lifetime subscribers. Right? Now, if let me explain this with an example. If suppose you have an autoimmune disease like celiac disease, they will not say that let's find a root cause. They'll probably start suppressing your immune system by prescribing medicines. When you do that and you suppress your immune system, you're likely to attract more symptom, more disease, then they are subscribed to more drugs, and this goes on and on. So by the end, you are at the age of 40, you are popping in more pills than berries and apples, right? So let me explain you in more detail. If someone is having high cholesterol or risk of cardiovascular disease, we are told that reduce our cholesterol. So what we do is we are referred statin drugs, and statin drugs actually what it does is it blocks the thing which produces cholesterol. But the fact is it also blocks an enzyme called CoQ10, right? Without this enzyme, we cannot have our ATP cycle cannot run, and we don't have energy, and we are low energy. We suffer from muscle pain, and then again we get a drug to counter that. So this is a vicious circle. So what are chronic diseases? So these are caused basically by chronic inflammation, which occurs when our gut microbiome, which we'll discuss in detail now, is in imbalanced state that releases toxin, enzyme, and metabolites that changes our gene expression. That changes that probably release more of inflammatory gases in our body, and then our immune system doesn't know what to do, and they only know what is inflammation. So it creates inflammation. Then our immune system becomes overactive, and then it starts attacking its own cell. So that's how, be it diabetes, obesity, digestive issues, cardiovascular diseases, cancer, Alzheimer, depression, anxiety, all have one root cause, that is chronic inflammation, which causes chronic diseases. In fact, we have been told that everyone we have to see our genetic composition, and but the fact is our genes doesn't change over life. So what causes disease is something else, is how our genes are expressed, and that depends upon what we eat and how these foods are digested in our body when we eat these foods, right? So over the last 5 decades, we have all got it wrong, and we have been focusing only on managing symptoms, and the end result is we spend a lot of money on managing our diseases. Now, this all drove me to fix the current healthcare model, and I was trying to figure out what exactly causes disease, what is the root cause of these diseases. And I went through a lot of medical journals and scientific papers, and I could find only one common cause, that is our gut microbiome. And these microbes in our gut are actually CEO of our body. They are the one who takes all the decision. We are like puppet, and they handle entire everything in our body. Be it interacting with brain, mitochondria, immune system, or even releasing hormones. All functions are done by our gut, right? And I think Dr. Preveen will share in detail about this. We'll be discussing more in detail. Most of our 70% immune system is around our gut lining, and that's the immune system is impacted, is trained, and by our gut, right? And when we are hungry, it is actually these microbes telling that it's time to feed them, and feed them what they are hungry for, not what you're hungry for. So that's a bit about our basic understanding why we started that. And what we do is basically we are actually using a specific science, which is a microbial science, where we decode and sequence your gut microbiome through a stool sample, and then you use that to analyze your biological data, and then provide you personalized dietary recommendations that can actually improve your health. So now let me ask Dr. Preveen Ramurthy, Why is our healthcare system struggling to fix chronic diseases? What is your view on that?
Yeah, Sushant, you're right. So the current, healthcare system has been quite efficient and quite, accomplished in terms of handling acute, you know, sorts of situations like injuries, surgeries, acute infectious diseases. But when it comes to chronic diseases, for instance, obesity, diabetes, allergy, uh, it's very much more complex than an acute situation because it is multifactorial in terms of the cause and the effect. So when you look at the chronic diseases, uh, participants, please go on mute. Participants, please go on mute. Uh, okay, so chronic diseases are pretty much, like I said, multifactorial. So let us look at the components of chronic disease, right? So you have the human genome, which is your DNA, and the products of the genome, like the proteins, like the metabolites that are coded in your human genome. So that is one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is the environment, which what do we mean by environment? The environment is, your diet, where you live, the geography, your exercise regimen, your nutrition, and things like that. And one of the most important things that we have not paid attention to, but we're increasingly paying attention to, is the microbial genome, the microbes that are in your gut, on your skin, in your lungs, everywhere. These are what we call as the commensals, or the good microbes. They inhabit your body. They don't cause any infections, but they're there. And we're increasingly beginning to realize the importance of these. So I would say, just to summarize, chronic diseases are combination of the environment, your human genome and its products, and the microbial genome and its products. So that brings me to the question of why and how is the microbiome so important. So let us look at some numbers, some figures and facts that will illustrate and elucidate why is it that the microbiome is so important. See, in our body, we have about 30 trillion cells. The human body contains an average of 30 trillion cells. The number of microbes living in our gut is estimated to be around 38 trillion cells. So that means there is 8 trillion more microbial cells, which means there is more. The human body is basically consists of more microbes than human cells, like around 57-60% of foreign cells and 43% of human cells, if we compute the percentage. Not only that, the number of genes that we have in our bodies, in each cell in our body, is about 20,000, whereas the number of microbial genes is around 2 to 20 million genes. That's the estimate. So that means that there's 100-fold or even greater than that of microbial genes compared to human genes. So we have to pay attention to the fact that these are very important numbers, and that means that there is some biological significance to the fact that we have such huge amounts of microbes in our body, microbial genes operating in our bodies. And if you look at the weight of the microbiome, if you just look at if you kind of look at the mass, there's about 2 kilograms of microbes in our body. And remember, your brain weighs about an average of 1.4 kilograms, but we have 2 kilograms of microbes. So there are so many other facts, but I just wanted to hit on these major facts. Another important fact is that 99.9% 9% or 99.4 to 99.9% of our genes, if you look at our genetic code, we're very similar, human being to human being. But we have an enormous diversity in the microbial genes and the composition of microbes, in our gut. And so this is why I think that the next frontier in human health is the microbiome, and it's being validated increasingly by the amount of research that's going into this space, as well as the amount of interest from not only companies like Gene Fataletics, but also pharmaceutical companies who are developing therapies based on the microbiome.
Yeah. If you allow me to, I'll add a couple of more points here in terms of the data. So probably when we talk of, gut and immune system, so 70% of immune cells are along our gut lining, and essentially our gut are actually, interacting with them and training them. So whatever inflammation happens is due to, the overactive or underactive of immune system, and as well as our, our happiness hormones and the way which makes us happy, or our mood behaviors are driven by serotonin. And it turns out that serotonin, 94% of serotonin is produced by our gut, not by our brain. So this essentially means that gut is actually is also called a second brain, right? So coming on to the next question, Dr. Preveen, I wanted to ask, so are these microbes a real reason for chronic diseases?
They play an important role in the chronic disease, because so far we've been only focused on the human genes and we've, we've, and its products, the proteins and the metabolites. But I think what we have not paid attention to is how microbiome also plays a significant role, in the evolution of chronic diseases. So, for instance, if you take obesity as an example, if you look at people who are lean and people who are obese, there are differences, in the microbial composition. And so when you kind of think about the scale at which the microbes, the microbiome exists, in our bodies, if particularly the ones in the gut, you can consider that those are the ones that are the metabolic engines, because they're consuming the foods that you're consuming. They're digesting things that you cannot, the human cells cannot digest. They are digesting those, they're producing products. And so huge implications in terms of carbohydrate and fat metabolism. And therefore, obesity can be linked pretty strongly to the gut microbiome. And the natural progression of obesity would be, type 2 diabetes, where, for instance, if you have a gut that's leaky, it leads to LPS accumulation and low-grade inflammation and insulin resistance. The most important thing about when you look at type 2 diabetes, everybody knows about the glycemic index and foods that increase your sugar or your glucose levels in the blood. It turns out that the microbiome has a unique influence on your glycemic response. So here you take two individuals. One has consumed, John has consumed a banana, and his blood glucose level shoots up. Whereas he eats watermelon, it's not as high as the consumption of banana. But then you look at the opposite with Matthew, you have, he consumes a watermelon and his blood glucose level goes up, and then he consumes banana and it's just the kind of opposite of what John has had. So really, you just from this alone, you can infer that there is no universal diet, and in the fact is that the microbiome plays a really important role in how you metabolize and how the glucose metabolism occurs in your body. So that's a very simple and powerful illustration of this situation, of the fact that the microbiome is a very important player. It's a metabolic engine that's embedded. It also, as Sushant said, it also interacts with the immune system. It interacts with the brain. Do you want to go back to the previous slide, Sushant?
Yeah. And I have a question before that. So
Mm.
it means that, a lot of people who have been told to have low carb food and, have high protein diets and follow a GI, so all these are actually just a way of managing our symptoms. They cannot cure diabetes.
Yeah, I think today, if you look at the world of medicine, right, it's transforming in a way that it's moving towards personalized medicine, right? So the concept of personalized medicine is matching your genetic profile to the drugs that will work for you, right?
Right.
So similarly, food is thy medicine, no question about it. So when it comes to food, it's also important to match your genetic profile, but also your microbial genetic profile, your microbiome genetic profile. And so there needs to be individualized diet. And this has been around, if you take Ayurveda, the ancient Indian form of medicine, there is a way to customize food. But, there was no particular scientific or modern scientific connection. And I think we can establish that with the microbiome, right? We can, which
Yeah.
has a direct impact. So I think we need to personalize diet based on microbiome, based on the human genetic profile. Just like how medicine is operating, we have to also be more scientific in our approach and not very universal in our approach.
Another point I wanted to share, probably last month we did, diabetes awareness week, and we got to know that, in terms of when we eat, a lot of low carb food and low GI food, what happens is all these foods are actually digested by microbes in our gut, right? Whatever we eat, it gets there, and what generally when they then these folks generally feed on fiber and carbohydrates, unlike told to us that carbohydrates are bad. So essentially when we consume less carbs, so these folks start eating our gut lining, and that's how we end up with a leaky gut. And and probably they eat a specific molecule in our leaky gut, right, which is again substantiated by our recent research done by an American company, where there's a molecule called fucose, which actually is eaten by these microbes, and that spikes our sugar level. And I think that is something which is causing the insulin resistance, right? So I think that's what do you think about this, on this? And probably is following a low carb diet should be restructured in a way, as you mentioned, in the precision medicine, or should we still continue following what our doctors and pharmacists and other people are telling?
Well, you see, medicine generally, if you go to a general clinician or a physician, their training is not in nutrition and diet, and so that's why they refer you to a dietitian. And then conventional, dietitians follow a little bit more conventional approach of prescribing solutions that are not personalized, and I think partnering with folks like dietitians and physicians and patients, where we say, listen, let's also look at your, just like how we do your lipid profile, your blood profiles, we should also do a microbial profile, because this has huge impact and huge benefits will come out of it in terms of helping personalized diet. And I'm a big believer in it. Otherwise, I wouldn't say this, that when the science is going this direction, I think we all ought to explore and see how we can incorporate this microbial testing and allow us to sort of modulate our lifestyle and achieve good health. And I have no doubts that a lot of insights will come out of this for people.
So let's move on to let's talk about maybe we should talk about cardiovascular disease, which is again
Uh,
something.
Correct. It's a natural progression of obesity, and not in all instances, in many instances. For instance, some metabolites released by the gut microbiome, such as trimethylamine N oxide, TMAO,
Right.
has been linked to coronary artery disease. And if you have a lower abundance of bacteroidetes and a higher abundance of lactobacillus, that has also been linked to cardiovascular or coronary artery disease. So there has been very good science behind publishing these, and people are actually trying to use this information to see how to treat
Okay.
people. Yeah.
Okay. And another point, which actually I think during COVID, a lot of people have faced, and this is quite relevant in terms of anxiety and depression. And I've seen a lot of people are going for therapies and counseling sessions, and since I recently did a lot of research on this, and I could found that again the connection between gut and brain has a role to play in our depression, anxiety. Can you throw some light on that?
Yeah, let's go to that gut-brain axis. You see, this gut-brain axis is not a new thing, right? People know about this in the sense that the vagus nerve, the 10th cranial nerve, is connected to the gut. I mean, it really comes down to the stomach, and we all know that when we feel nervous or depressed or anxious, we do feel that butterflies in the stomach. So we all feel that. So this is something that everybody knows about how when you have anxiety, your appetite either increases substantially or your appetite goes down completely. So we all have experienced the gut brain axis. Now there is a lot of science of showing that serotonin production, as you said, is in the gut, and the gut microbiomes also can enhance the serotonin production by some of the gut cells in the gut, right? And the other thing is that in people with depression, the gut microbiome turns tryptophan, which is an amino acid in our foods, into a different chemical called kynurenine, and more readily than serotonin. And then there's also another neurotransmitter called GABA, which is produced by the gut bacteria. And antidepressants like Prozac or fluoxetine, can have major effects on the gut microbiome. So there's plenty of evidence that's emerging, correlations that are emerging, showing that the gut-brain axis is real, and it does have an impact. And then if you look at research studies in animal models, for instance, so when they took fecal samples from patients with schizophrenia, Parkinson's, autism, and depression, and put it into these mouse models or rodent models, they found the equivalent of those diseases being expressed in these animals. So it shows that the patterns of the gut microbiome and the disease states correlate, and they can be recapitulated. That means they can be reproduced when you take them and transplant them somewhere.
Okay.
For instance, people with fewer bacteria have a stronger pattern of hyperactivity in the prefrontal cortex, which has been associated with depression. Whereas if you have more GABA producing bacteria, there's a little bit more reduced anxiety. There's more reduced anxiety and a calmer sort of disposition, mental disposition. So science is backing it up. More and more research is getting done, and what we're seeing is some pretty good science that's showing some of these links and generating these sorts of molecular level information.
Yeah. I'd like to add here one more point because we are grappling with diabetes, and for all of the people who are there in this meeting, it is essential to understand that the core root cause of diabetes is not insulin resistance, but it is inflammation caused by when our gut is in the balance. And this happens because, as Praveen mentioned, that gut and brain axis talk to each other through vagus nerve. And when we are under inflammation, when our body is letting a lot of harmful gases, it breaks the communication between gut and brain. So gut cannot tell the brain that I'm hungry or I'm full, and then we keep on eating, and that's how our sugar level goes up, and that's how our insulin resistance comes into picture. So insulin resistance is actually not a root cause, but it is an impact of the root cause. It is impact of inflammation. So essentially that's where we all are going wrong. Praveen, let's talk about is it true that we are only 1% humans, like in terms of the microbial
Yeah,
community?
if you look at the number of genes that we harbor that are not our own, that we're in the 2 million to 20 million
Okay.
thereabouts of microbial genes, and we only have 20,000 genes. So yes, that definitely is a true statement.
Okay. Okay. And can you also share a bit about uh, the impact of consuming drugs and antibiotics on our gut health?
Yeah, this is, because we know that antibiotics kill bacteria, and so they don't distinguish between the good bacteria and the bad bacteria, right? So the good bacteria are the ones that have been living with us for a long time, the gut bacteria. The bad bacteria, the infections that we acquire, like E. coli or salmonella, typhi, or those which cause typhoid, and so on and so forth. So when someone takes antibiotics, particularly studies have been done in children at a very young age. Many of them get these ear infections and they put on heavy doses of antibiotics, and that does have a huge impact. And many of those kids develop allergies and complications, in the way the immune system is modulating itself because of excessive antibiotic use. And in older patients on the other end of the spectrum, heavy treatment with antibiotics also results in Clostridium difficile infections, which are very, very severe forms of diarrhea and GI tract infections. And so the microbiome can be heavily disrupted with antibiotics. That doesn't mean antibiotics should not be given, but I think attention should be paid to how we administer antibiotics, and should probiotics be given. Personally, I've used probiotics for my kid when he's been on antibiotics, and it's helped him not have diarrheic episodes of diarrhea. So that tells you that the gut microbiome is important, and it needs to be carefully monitored, tested, and taken care of, because then one can achieve better health.
So one of the this brings to an important point, and how is food, whatever we eat is impacting our gut microbiome and vice versa. So gut impacts our food and food impacts our gut. So can you throw light on that?
See, we already talked about that banana and watermelon and a John and Matthew example. That itself
Yeah.
shows what a big difference different kinds of foods make to the kind of microbes that we all have that are quite different from each other. If you take the example of polyphenol-rich foods, these are things that everybody thinks are great, pomegranate juice, berries, flax seeds, olives, and things like that. But if you have each one of us, as we all know, have different microbial compositions. So if you have uh, microbes that can convert, this ellagic acid, which is an important component of these, to urothin, uh, then you're in good shape. But if your gut lacks that specific microbe, then it results in inflammation. So again, personalizing diets a nutrition based on uh, gut microbiome is really important. So this is why uh, universal foods, that everything, this is good for everyone, this is bad for everyone, is not the way to go. We need to be cognizant of the differences in our genetic profile, in our microbial profiles, in order to customize and personalize our nutrition.
So essentially, if I'm correct, I understand is whatever we eat, it gets into small intestine and large intestine. Our gut microbes releases different digestive enzymes, right? That breaks the or metabolize the chemical in our food, and then either we get nutrients like polyphenols, antioxidants, or vitamins or minerals, or we get harmful gases like lipopolysaccharides or maybe ammonia and methane, and all these are actually root cause of maybe colon cancer or IBS or even diabetes, right? So essentially, whatever we have been following a fat diet, maybe a ketosis or paleo or whatever quantified nutrition, all these have a long-term impact on our overall metabolic health, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's an interesting thing to learn actually. Uh, Now, I wanted to discuss one more thing. So when we talk about, the cardiovascular diseases, right? So when we are taking high protein diet, and this is specifically because if you see a lot of people during COVID have been told that have a lot of protein in your diet, don't eat carb or don't eat fat, or because, or maybe have a lot of high of vitamin C because it will build your immune system. So when you talk of paleo diet, like high protein diet, right? So mostly the products like even eggs, chicken, fish, right? Even broccoli. All these foods are high in carnitine and choline, and this is how we get TMA, in our, because this got metabolized into TMA, and then this goes into liver, and it is converted into TMA, and that's what we call is cardiovascular diseases, right? So how do we, because people are still believing and thinking that it is cholesterol is bad, cholesterol causes problem in our health for heart attack, or maybe other chest issues, but why is it, why is it happening that people are not able to figure out that why? Because cholesterol is important for our body. Cholesterol is produces vitamins, it produces a lot of hormones like testosterone, estrogen, right? So why people are not getting a right information or guidance in terms of why cholesterol is not not bad.
See, again, we talked about, how the gut microbiome is so important in metabolizing all the food we eat, and it produces its own products, right? So, cholesterol is produced based on the way the food that we eat is processed, right? And so, you know, you might process it differently from how I might process it, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
produce it, right?
yeah.
And so I think that's where this whole universal diet doesn't work for everybody. We all know this from personal experience. You know, one of your friends tells you, "Hey, I was on a low carb diet. I lost a lot of weight. I've been able to keep it." And then you try it, and you just go back, and you don't you cannot keep up with it. You suddenly want to go and eat a lot more carbs, and you put on weight. Similarly, this whole Atkins diet, with high protein diet, so people lose weight, and then it just comes back. So but then it's weight gain or weight loss, is that health? I don't know if that is true. What makes you feel good overall is important. So I think, again, how your metabolic engine, which is not only your gut but also the microbes in the gut, how they interact with your body, and how they interact with the food that you take in, does have a huge impact on how what sort of things each individual should eat.
Okay, that's nice. That's nice. So let me explain you what we are doing in detail. How we solve it. So essentially, we decode uh, we decode your gut by taking a fecal sample and sequences your sample in our laboratory, and then analyzes your sample based on whatever digestive enzymes your gut is producing, and we map it with the chemicals in the food you're eating and tell probably which one is good, which one is bad, which one you should avoid, which one you should minimize, which one you should eat more frequently. And that's how we take sample, we analyze your genes expression. So genes expression means whatever you're eating, your microbes either releases harmful gases or nutrients. That is what is what is being produced, that is what is our genes expression. And that's how we use that to provide personalized recommendation. For instance, so this is how it works. We take your sample, we process in our lab as I shared, and then we use our multi-omics technology where we decode your entire microbial expression, and then use that data to provide you personalized dietary recommendations. So just take an example, in terms of if it's, if probably spinach, we are told spinach is healthy, but it turns out that 50% of the people who eat spinach are suffering from digestive issues. Why? Because spinach is high in oxalic acid, and if we don't have oxalobacter in our gut, which can detoxify this acid, so it will start releasing a lot of harmful gases like ammonia, and that will create inflammation in our body. Similarly, protein is something which is consumed only by small intestine. Our large intestine, our gut doesn't know what protein is. So when they get protein, when you eat excess protein, you get excess protein, and they ferment it and releases ammonia and methane gas, and then again this can lead to even diabetes, weight gain, or even IBS issues. Similarly, as Praveen mentioned about antioxidants, if your body is not able to metabolize the antioxidants, you will not get antioxidants. It doesn't mean a food is high in antioxidants. It doesn't mean that you will get that antioxidant. It depends whether that can be metabolized into beneficial compound for you. This is the impact we can, through learning about your gut, who are there, what they do, what functions they perform, what they produce. We can tell you what food you should eat, what food you should avoid, and then that can help you eliminate your bloating issues, improve your energy levels, reduce inflammation. You can improve your nutrient absorption, overcome, even skin is linked to your gut microbiome. Improve your metabolite production, get more nutrients, and overcome anxiety and depression as well. So. And that's typical how a customer journey goes. Customer register, he makes a payment, he signs up, and then he takes a fecal sample, he sends it to a lab sequence it for 4 to 6 weeks, and then the report is generated. Based on report, we provide you personalized dietary recommendations. And again, there are 3 stages. First is resetting your gut, where we give you 4 weeks to reset your gut based on one particular dietary recommendation. Then for the phase 2, we change your dietary recommendation. That's where we optimize your gut. So probably you have killed your bad folks living in your gut, and then you're actually feeding your nourishing and improving your gut. And then third is obviously nourishing your gut for 2 weeks, and this is again a one cycle for 3 months, and again you go for a retest, and that's it takes around 3 to 4 cycles for you to bring your gut to an optimized level. That's it from our side, and as a matter of fact, for all the attendees, we are offering our latest publication free, and a 10% discount on our product, and we are now open for questions.
Thank you very much for both of your speeches today. They're very interesting. I wonder if, although you have already spoken to this question, if you could make a simple correlation between the research that you've done on the genetic understanding of the body and this bionomic understanding, which I've understood from the other speaker that there's been an enormous difference in the number and amount of these patterns in the body. But if you could make a clear correlation between the testing, in particular, the testing of the genetics and the testing of bionomics, and if these are both able to be done and correlated. Thank you.
Okay.
Sushant, maybe I'll take. Oh, you want to go ahead?
Okay, so probably I'll tell you. So I'll start with very basic, in a very basic, in terms of when we talk of, the microbial genes. So we, as Praveen mentioned, we have around 20 million microbial genes. So we have 99% of these genes microbes genes, not our genes, right? So we have only 20,000 human genes, and that's how we are only 1% human. So whenever we eat something, it gets digested in small intestine, then whatever is left, it goes into large intestine. There are these microbes actually metabolize these foods and releases different byproducts in our bloodstream, which goes to different organs. And these byproducts can be beneficial products like vitamins, minerals, short chain fatty acids, or maybe harmful products like harmful gases like LPS and ammonia. So how it works is, when we take your sample, your stool sample, we'll get to know, we extract your DNA, and we'll get to know that what is the percentage of abundance of your bacteria who are living in your gut, who are active. Probably, let me take an example. If archaea is active in your gut, archaea is methane producing microbes, so it will convert the hydrogen into methane, and it will cause a lot of inflammation in your body. So if we know that archaea is something, so if you have archaea active, so probably will not give you a food which is high in methane, probably protein consumption may be low. And similarly, we'll get to know who all are there, who are active, what functions they are performing, right? Everyone has a different function to perform. A person can metabolize protein, a person cannot metabolize fat, a person can fertilize spinach or broccoli or pomegranate, whatever you call it, right? So essentially we get to know what all functions they are performing and what they are producing. So in simple word, you have a map the following, where you have digestive enzymes and peptides which are there, and foods, chemical from the foods which are there. Then we map them and tell, okay, probably this is a particular chemical, this cannot be metabolized by your enzyme, so probably this food you should not eat. Or probably this particular food is something which can be easily metabolized and provide you vitamins and minerals, so essentially this should be your superfood, right? So that's the kind of insights we get, and it is unique for you because you have a different microbiome. It is based on your environment, your country, your age, how you're fed since the beginning, how you're born, so there are a lot of factors. And again, for food for you, even would be different for your friend or for your neighbor or even for your spouse.
Right. So the question Sandra was asking, Sushant, was, is there a correlation between the human genome and the microbial genome, right?
Okay.
So, so Sandra, the answer to your question is that genetically we are all exceptionally similar, and we have a small, out of the 3 billion bases of which are, pairs of DNA bases, which are in those 20,000 genes, right? You basically were 99.5 or 99 and above, very, very, closely related. And there's a huge amount of differences if you look at it at the base level, where we all have these different polymorphisms and genetic changes. So that is one component. Now, how is that correlated with the microbial genes? I don't think anybody has done deep research on correlating it, because the diversity of the microbes, as Sushant was saying, right, is so large between people living, in different geographies, people living in the same country, within the same geography, and different, as you age, the microbial composition sometimes will also change. So there is no correlation. The way I would look at it is both those pieces of information are complementary to each other. I don't know if we answered your question, Sushant, and I tried to take a shot at it from different angles, but let us know.
Yes, that's excellent. Thank you so very much. Thank you.
Okay.
So Preveen, there's another question from Ms. Jyoti Karmaka that's related to cancer. So, what happens after chemo, right? I have just finished 6 chemos and I felt my bowels are totally going haywire, right? So probably we can throw light on again, I'll add something and you can then further substantiate.
Sure.
So essentially what happens is, even chemo or immunotherapy, when you are in cancer or when you are suffering or you are in the risk of cancer, So all these drugs also go into your gut, and depending about your gut microbiome, essentially these drugs are metabolized either as poison or medicine. It depends upon who are there living in your gut and what they are doing, and whether they are capable to metabolize this into medicine, right? So essentially, if you have gone into chemo and then again you're facing digestive issues, probably your gut is not able to metabolize it properly, or probably you're not able to extract proper benefits from it, right? And Praveen, can you add more on to this if you think something need to be
Yeah,
added?
there is, this is an area of research. I can give you an example from the MD Anderson Cancer Center in the US, which is a very famous place. And there's a researcher there that's actually looking at the microbiome of the tumor. And they are making correlations between, if the microbiome is of this pattern, then the tumor responds to immunotherapy. uh, you know, when we say immunotherapy, it's, antibody drugs that are called checkpoint inhibitors that can block, uh, uh, take away the block that the tumor is imposing on the immune system. That's the information I have. Specific to chemo, we're happy to do a bit of research and get back to you. I don't have it at the moment. Uh, but but again, the diet that you're on also potentially can influence your gut. In addition to the chemo, there's obviously something going on between chemo and the gut microbiome, that interaction. I don't have much information at this point for you, but I'm happy to, Jyoti, we're happy to get back to you. If you can leave your email or your contact information with us, we'll be happy to research this and get back to you, and do whatever we can to at least give you a bit more information than we have right now.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So Praveen, another question is from Subha is, how does this work with ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease?
Yeah, so these diseases have been most studied because people, they have been successful situations where people with ulcerative colitis have actually recovered because of fecal transplants, right? So that tells you that there is significant impairment and imbalance in the gut microbiome of people with ulcerative colitis, and that can be cured to a significant extent by transplanting microbiome from somebody else who's normal. And those studies are out there, in terms of publications and whatnot. So, so at least having an understanding of your gut microbiome early on might potentially prevent you from getting into, a situation where you have, develop ulcerative colitis or Crohn's, right? So this is the idea of personalized medicine, is to not only ensure that you're individualizing treatments and whatnot, but also to intercept disease early on with early detection, right? And so if you end up knowing that you have these types of tendencies of Crohn's or ulcerative colitis, one could intervene earlier. If you end up having it, it also is good to check your microbiome and understand it's pretty bad, it needs to be replaced, right?
So I'll add here in terms of when we check your microbiome. So essentially, there are two phylum of bacteria which are dominating in our gut, which is bacteroides and firmicutes. And in most of the cases, when we are suffering from IBS like ulcerative colitis or maybe Crohn's disease, the bacteroides have a higher presence, and and that is one reason of why we face this digestive issues. And ideally we need to reduce this and bring this level at an optimized level, and again that is through our dietary recommendations itself, or dietary interventions. depending on where it improves a bit of firmicutes and reduce bacteria, right? So that's on. And again, to getting into more detail, probably, we can, that's depending upon each individual. Probably, we need to know what is the gut composition right now, who are the pathogens currently, who are the good people living there, and that's how we can decode it. Right.
Yeah, just
So
to add to that, these bacteria, they produce higher levels of urease, right? Which is what will, you know, uh, you know, produce more higher levels of ammonia from nitrogen, right?
yeah.
And then just sort of going back to uh, Jyoti Jyotiji's question about cancer, not necessarily chemo, there are certain bacteria that have been implicated in colorectal carcinogenesis, like Fusobacterium and some strains of E. coli and Bacteroides fragilis and all that. All of this is emerging science. One can't say that one could right away use this to treat people, at least in this instance. But a lot of insights are coming in terms of diseases, but also how microbiome interacts with the drugs that we take. For instance, acid reflux medication, they basically reduce the acidity in the stomach, which means that your microbial count goes up, and so it does have a direct implication on your gut microbiome, right? Similarly, we already talked about Prozac and its effects, on the gut microbiome. So just like uh, food that we consume has an effect on microbes, anything that we put into our gut that is a medicine or a drug or a supplement does have its impact, and you want to understand that.
Okay, Praveen, there's another important question from Rajan, because it's about autoimmune disease like GPA, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so how do we heal that? Again, autoimmune again linked to your immune system. So when you throw light on that, probably that's more on, how our gut and immune system are interacting.
Correct. Well, you get into a very specific question of granular granulomatosis, right? And I cannot speak to that level of specificity in this case, but in general, I think it is very clear that the gut immune axis is pretty strong, and autoimmune diseases, allergies. For instance, I'll give you the example of, since we are kind of in the immune disease space, if you take children that have grown up in farms and children that have grown up in urban areas, uh, the relative uh, incidence of allergy and asthma is much, much lesser in children who grow up in the rural communities compared to the urban communities. Clearly tells you that you want to be exposed more to bacteria. It's a good thing. In the US, we tend to be hyper clean. We use antibacterial wipes and on ourselves and on our countertops and kitchens. Really, this is not very good. Eliminating bacteria from around the environment doesn't seem to be very favorable for allergy. And this is the hygiene hypothesis, right? So there are those sorts of things. We will get back to you, Rajan, on that autoimmune condition that you're specifically talking about. But in general, know that uh, the immune system is a very delicate balance between attacking harmful bacteria and viruses and attacking our own body cells, which is the autoimmune situation. Or in the case of allergies, the immune system is producing a lot of, we call it Th2 type of reaction, which is a lot of cytokines and factors that cause damage to the cells, in our body, right? Not as severe as autoimmune, but somewhere in between. So I think the gut microbiome has a huge impact in all of that, in how it modulates the immune system and immune disease. And for optimal immune health, knowing our gut microbiome is really important, rather than just looking at our IgE antibodies, our IgG antibodies, and such. I think also adding gut microbiome profiling is going to be really important.
I'll add here, Rajan, one more thing, and Praveen. So again, this has also to do with leaky gut, because when we have a leaky gut, or probably foods and bacteria pooping into bloodstream, right, and our immune system start creating these immune bodies, and then again that get into different cells, and that starts inflammatory reaction for every food, and that's how we have food tolerances and everything. So probably, Rajan, we can discuss specific about GPA maybe offline, or we can fix up a call and discuss. You, me, and Praveen can discuss in this detail. Coming on to your second question on diabetes, as I mentioned, so again, diabetes is caused by chronic inflammation, which happens when we are feeding something to harmful bacteria, which is releasing harmful gases that breaks the communication between gut and brain, and then we end up uh, consuming a lot of food, and that's how it spikes our sugar level, right? So essentially, when we talk about diabetes, it is not having less carbs or more protein, or maybe with the ketosis. It is depending upon who are there in your gut, what they are doing, how they are interacting with the food you eat. So essentially, we'll get to know probably, if you have to have spinach in your diet, or broccoli, or maybe you need to have almonds in your avoid list, or maybe you need to have apples in your avoid list, or maybe blueberry in your superfood list. So all these things would entirely depend upon who are there living in your gut, right? And this is again something which is specific to you, because you need to decode your biological functions, what chemicals are converted into what is a biochemical reaction happening into the body, right? So that is again very specific to you. So again, if someone is having high spiking sugar level, it has nothing to do with low carb or high protein. You need to really learn, your biological system. You need to learn who are there living in your gut. So Praveen, Kanan's question is, what is the treatment regime that will be recommended post sample
Yeah.
analysis?
Yeah, so there's no treatment, Kanan. It's basically customized advice on nutrition that ties into your microbiome profile. So we are not in the business of prescribing drugs. We are in the business of prescribing food as a medicine that is personalized based on your microbiome profile.
So folks, more questions?
Well, we had a very interactive audience today. So thank you, members of the audience. I know we cannot solve all your problems with this one webinar, but we hope it sparks your interest in sort of trying to understand the bigger part of your genome, which is the microbial genome and the microbes that reside in you, and how you can leverage it for health and happiness and peace in your lives. We all wish you all the best. Everyone is going through some problem or the other. So best wishes to you all. Stay safe, stay healthy. That's my parting message. And I'll hand it off to Sushant also.
Thank you everyone for sparing your valuable time and spending 1 hour with us.
Thank you, Sushant. It was a very informative session. All the very best to you.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
we will all send an email regarding, you can access our content, our blogs. There are a lot of podcasts is there, so we'll send you on email. Probably you can access, and
Certainly.
if you have any questions, feel free to come back to us.
Okay. Thank you, and all the very best. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sushant and Dr. Preveen, for such an enlightening session. I must say that I'm sure all our participants would have benefited from the knowledge inputs you've shared on, on the gut microbiome relation. And I'm sure we would have become at least a little more knowledgeable on how our digestive system is affected by this relation. So thank you so much for the session and taking out time for everyone.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Be well. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye, everyone. Thank you, all the participants. Thank you for such an engaging conversation. Shush.